a lot of the time, people talk as if once you make some legal adjustments here and there, once you declare a state of emergency or whatever, you'll solve the problem. That's far from the case. And I would completely agree that, I mean, we shouldn't focus just on laws. We should focus on the nature of the problem. And in my view, I mean, that's where vested interests come. You see, if you have a lot of people who feel that there is value in something and who are going after it by hook or by crook, they will try to protect the position that they're in every way possible. So that makes it more difficult for the enforcement action. I mean, we lost a whole military major, you know, because the military were put to work in relation to a situation involving illegal mining. Now, so we can't run away from the fact that you have these vested interests. And if we are not willing to assess the graduation of vested interests from one period to another, I mean, and it's not just about political parties in power that we should be interested in, but even if we talk about it in terms of periods, we have to identify the way these vested interests protect their positions, which makes it more difficult to enforce. So enforcement is a problem. And it becomes more problematic when you have these vested interests very, you know, sort of entrenched in powerful positions.
We have to identify the source of the vested interest. I know you've been monitoring the situation as well, and I'll come back to you very shortly, Mr. Ikwetu. What have you yourself identified, which is why we are where we are?
Well, I mean, it's quite clear to me. When you look at the award of licenses, which Mr. Ikwetu doesn't want you to talk about, the reality is that a lot of licenses were awarded to, you know, people who were closely connected with those in power, those who had the opportunity, those who had the authority to grant licenses. That's the reality. I mean, we can't run away from it.
The concerns of a lot of people is that, yes, you're just 9 months into power, but you don't seem to have had the strong will enough to deal with this situation head on, as you made us believe ahead of the 2024 general election.
Well, I'm not a spokesperson.
Certainly, but
I'm not a spokesperson for any of the people who may have made utterances. But I want us to just assess the facts that are a matter of public knowledge. Those facts include the reality that has just been explained, that virtually all over Ghana, there's illegal mining activity. So there is a scale of the problem which, you know, has to be taken into consideration. Now, in taking that into consideration, I mean, Mr. Poku mentioned the availability of military or other personnel, security personnel to cope with the situation and so on. But you see, I think that is looking at it too narrowly from the perspective of just enforcement action, because something of this nature can't be dealt with by just deploying troops or by just, you know, and that's why in my mind, if you just started, I mean, it would be the easiest thing for the president to say, I'm declaring a state of emergency because of Galamsey. That's a proclamation he can make under the constitutional and the statutory provisions.
yes.
But even after you make that declaration, how are you going to implement your enforcement capabilities? And what is the capacity that you have, both in terms of even the state of the economy that we have, the resources that are available to the government, to be able to deploy in that manner? But I think there's an even more severe problem that we should deal with. You see, declaring a state of emergency, and you will notice that in the Constitution, emergency powers are dealt with in the chapter that has to do with human rights. When you declare a state of emergency, it actually gives the power to the president to do things which in the normal course, he would not have the ability to do. So I think that people should be very careful in some of these demands about a state of emergency and so on. Because you ask yourself, do you really want the executive, the president, to have unusual powers that he can use, you know, in respect of a state of emergency? In my view, honestly, I can't see a real justification for just making a declaration of a state of emergency and assuming that through that you will have satisfied people that you're giving urgent consideration to Galamsey.
So let me